Jaya Prabhuji. Hello. Welcome to the Retroprogressive Yoga Institute. My name is Swami Omkarananda. I am a disciple of Prabhuji since 1997, and in this institute I share my reflections on the writings of Prabhuji. In this course, I am working on the Tantra, Liberation in the World. It's the second course we do on this book. This book goes deep into the Tantric revelation, which is very rich in spiritual insights and also a big part of the path of Prabhuji and of the message of the Retroprogressive Yoga. This is the class number 8 of the second course, so if you didn't watch, I recommend to start gradually going over the lectures because we are building the knowledge about the development of this revelation. In this second course, we studied the first chapter of the second section of the book called The Origins and Development of the Tantric Revelation. In this chapter, Prabhuji summarizes all the different aspects of the revelation in just a few paragraphs each, before going deeper into more details about each stage. He gives us just an overview, and this is what we did in these last classes. Just an overview, just to touch, to put the things in place, in time, in circumstances, to have a maybe superficial but wide view of all what we are going to study more in depth in the following chapters. So the classes that we give, it were dedicated to understand the following topics. We studied the relationship between the Vedic and the Tantric revelation. What were the similarities and differences between them? What was the relationship between them? Then we went on to analyze the different streams within the Tantric revelation, those of the right hand and those of the left hand. What were the differences between them? We also studied the 3 stages of the revelation, the Ati Marga, the Mantra Marga and the Kula Marga. Lastly, we studied the qualities of the post-scriptural stage, which we called the Kashmir Shaivism. In this class, which is the last of this series, we will study what left from this graph to know. What were the different streams within Tantra? The Vaishnavism, the Shaktism, and the Shaivism. Let's get started. We explained that within the Vedic cult of Rudra, there was a later stage in which Rudra became identified with Shiva, and a very devotional movement tradition towards Lord Shiva developed, based and popularized by the Purāṇas, which were the scriptures, the later scriptures of the revelation. From within these Puranic cults of Shiva, we see the emergence of some cults that were cults of ascetics, that they were pre-tantric. We cannot call this stage still Tantra, but they start gathering like qualities that will give the fertile land for the emergence of Tantra. Those were the cults of the Ati Marga. Then the development, the miracle, the revelation, the scriptural revelation took place, giving birth to the Shaiva Tantra cults of the Mantra Marga. This was a parallel revelation, a clearly distinctive revelation that brought many reform into the search for divinity. Later on, the tradition of the Kaula Siddhas influenced the sects of the Mantra Marga, giving rise to a later development, which was the Shakta Kaula cults that we call the Kula Marga. But what I want to emphasize today is that you might get the impression that the Tantra was some kind of esoteric tradition, that it was underground, while the main stream was very different. But maybe it started in this way, but because it was so powerful, it was charged with the energy of truth and development and liberation. So it went and influenced so many other traditions of the region. So it influenced the Vaishnavism, which was its already very established tradition, creating the Vaishnava Pancharatra body of texts. It also influenced the tradition of the worship of the sun god, Surya, creating a body of texts that they are the Saurya Tantras. There is another stream within the Tantric revelation of the worship to Lord Ganesh, and we see a stream of the Ganapatya Tantras, although later on this stream was included into the Shaivism, but originally was a separate set of scriptures and traditions. But it didn't stop there. It went and influenced almost every religion that it came in contact. Of course, very well known how much the Tantra influenced Buddhism, creating a whole new stream within Buddhism that is the Tantric Buddhism. It's beyond the scope of this book, but it developed and deserved really a deeper study by itself. But also Jainism was influenced by Tantra, and even Sikhism, Islam, Taoism, Shinto, and the Bon traditions. My fascination with this development goes beyond the history of some distant time or distant place. It's truly the history of the fervent search for the divine. I'm very fascinated by the beauty of this alive tradition, because it went and gave place to many developments. This openness, while we keep in focus that what we are looking for is not to preserve a tradition, but to experience reality. And that's our motivation. So everything that can give me advancement and lead me there, I'm open to try. I'm open to hear. So instead of creating a sectarian and doctrinal and dogmatic approach that of preserving the old and being close to the differences, all these interactions between different traditions, we see an openness that characterizes those who are really loyal to the search and ready to change their systems for more effective ones if what I really want is spiritual development. So this is how we see a three set of completely different body of texts that I want to compare today. We have the Vedas, the oldest text, then we have the Purāṇas, and we have the Tantras. These were very distinctive and different canon of scriptures, and we will study now what were the differences between them. The Vedas are very antique. There is not a consensus when they started, but we can say that safely we can say that at least from the 3000 before Christ. We know that the Vedas have different sections. We have the section of the hymns, the Samhitas. We have the Brahmanas, the Aranyakas, and ultimately the Upanishads, in which the most subtle knowledge is taught. The Purāṇas were much recent texts, were between the 4th and the 6th century, most of them, but many continue to be written later on. Vedas are considered the revelation, the divine word. Purāṇas are written by sages, by saints, of what they heard, what they try, what they discover, what they remember. So they still have the status of holy scriptures, but they were not revealed scriptures. So they are the smriti, the remembered scriptures. But we see continuity between the values of the Vedas and the values of the Purāṇas. But in parallel, we see this new tantric miracle, which was revealed, put in written. It said that it's very antique as well, just it was revived and put in scriptures between the 5th and the 12th century of the current era. The tantric corpus was a distinct corpus different than the Vedas. Of course, some said it's like the fifth Veda. It's clearly a continuity, but it's clearly a distinctive set of texts, and we did a detailed lecture about it. So now we have three ways: the way of the Veda, the way of the Purāṇa, and the way of the Tantra. What is truly the difference between them? So in the Vedas, the gods were the natural forces. In the Purāṇas, we find the anthropomorphic gods. In the Tantra, we find this insertion of the god as immanent. One god can express in different forms. So I want to situate you thousands of years ago in the distant lands of India, in which the human beings trying to understand where they are, who they are, what they're supposed to do, what is this all about. And then they start observing nature and recognizing the different forces that operate in nature. And also noticing that they are completely subject to the mercy of these very potent forces, to the wind, to the fire, to the thunder, to the storm, to the sky, to the rain. They are totally dependent on this. So how they can influence these forces? What depends on them? What is a blessing and what is a punishment? They are completely indefense in front of this powerful, and they're completely dependent on them. Their survival depends on them. So they started worshipping them as gods, which was their attempt to relate to these forces in some way or another, and also to influence on them. You know, some said, so primitive. It's so primitive. What a primitive belief. How a human being, by making a prayer or a ritual, can influence things that are totally impersonal. That's the modern belief. And I cannot say that I don't agree, but how do you know? How do you know that are completely impersonal? So though these people went to the rishis, to those who saw, and those who saw said that yes, we can influence, our intention can influence. We are in an harmonic relationship with them. They are not separate, but they are in relation with us. And this is how they develop the hymns to glorify the different forces of nature, and they gave them names. So we have Indra, was the god of all gods, the god of the sky, and we have Vayu, and we have Agni. Agni was a very central god in the Vedic times because he was the lord of fire, and fire was essential for the survival of the human race. And not only that, he was the messenger between the humans and the gods. Why? Because he was present in every ritual. The fire was like the priest that preside over the ritual. And when we offer something from nature back to the forces of nature that bless us with these goods, so we burn them in order that they will elevate to the gods. And this is how Agni is the one who takes the messages to the gods. And not only that, Agni is the deity that presides in every house. Every house, to survive, they need the presence of Agni that gives warmth and heat the place and help them to cook what it will nourish them. So Agni was a very central deity in the Vedic times. Then we see between the 5th and the 6th century before Christ the emergence of a totally new approach towards divinity. That was what brought the Buddhism. Buddhism was very, very influential in India. So much so that it almost whipped out all the Vedic tradition. There was later on a revival, and ultimately Buddhism was just cleaned up from India, but it was gaining more and more popularity. And what Buddhism said, there is no God, there is only nothingness. So don't deal with rituals, so don't try to connect, to communicate, just learn your human conditioning, why you suffer, what is the source of the suffering, and let alone whatever is beyond. You can call it nothingness, because there is no a form, a God, someone that hears. So this brings a different approach, respectable indeed, but very going inwards to an inner journey, introspection of the journey, instead of these rituals. Now, with the Vedic rituals, we had a different problem, is that many people were excluded from the benefits that this ritual brought. Of course, rituals were done for the benefit of the community, but by definition, because of the revelation, it divides the society in different castes, and those who can repeat the Vedic mantras must be from the Brahmanas castes. They're called the twice born. And whoever doesn't belong to this class, so he couldn't, to this caste, he couldn't take part of reciting these mantras. It was not allowed. Now, with the emergence of the Buddhism and with the fortification of the Shudra caste, or of the merchants, of the Vaishya caste, that with the development of economy and the agriculture, they went and become more and more central in their functionings in the society. There was not enough for them, that they're being excluded and put it aside by the Brahmanism. So they start getting open and attracted to different kinds of spiritual search. So we see the influence of the Buddhism, and we see the influence of this emergent, powerful Vaishya Shudra caste that they went and developed. So what the Purāṇas brought, it was yet a different relationship with the divine. Instead of the divine being the force of nature, the divine has a human form. We can relate to it, but not only that, we can develop devotion towards this God, because he's a benevolent God, he takes care of us, and this God can take different forms. And this is how we see the emergence of different streams of bhakti. Bhakti is the way to relate. It's a relationship of love between the God and the devotee. The Tantra brought the search to a totally different level, which is God is not there somewhere. God is here. This world is not a distant place, a punishment or a separation from God, but is an encounter of God with itself. This is the plane of the immanent God. So you can see how the search went and became more subtle and more deep. And the Tantra, clearly a different angle, totally different angle to approach this search, which is going inwards. Because if the divinity is here, you don't need to wait for something to happen, you don't need to go somewhere, but you need to go inwards. And with this introspection, you will discover your own divinity. The Vedas were about hymns for glorification rituals. The Purāṇas stole the mythology, and the Tantras, instructions for practice and rituals. So in the Vedas, we see the hymns that glorify the different gods, and they were meant to be used and repeat during rituals. Rituals were very costly, expensive, involving, long, so ritual was not approachable for the common people. Moreover, they needed to be sponsored by kings, because who can afford these Vedic rituals. It was very costly. Now the Purāṇas, among many other things, they brought the mythology, meaning the stories. Why? Because this Vedic knowledge was very difficult for the common people to grasp. People didn't know the Sanskrit of the scriptures. They were not taught or educated on these scriptures, and it was complicated. So there were subtle truths or encrypted truths to understand. But what the Purāṇas did, they put all these fundamental truths into stories. So through the mythology and the stories of the gods and the relationship between the gods and the sages, the common people could learn about the ethics and the metaphysics of the Vedas, but through a very approachable way, which is stories. So this is how the Brahmanas went to different towns in India, telling the stories of the Purāṇas, spreading the Purāṇas, and in this way educating those who were not capable of learning the Upanishad directly. But the essence of the Upanishads, it can be found in the stories. So the mythology of Shiva, Shakti and Vishnu developed through the Purāṇas. But the Tantras were not for mythological purposes, although we find dialogues between Shiva and Shakti and can be different aspects of Shiva and Shakti. The purpose of the Tantras were to give guidance for practical stages or steps for liberation. In the moment that he brought the divinity to the very seeker to discover his own divinity, so it's not a matter of praising someone or hearing the stories or loving someone, but of evoking and awakening the inner energy that will reveal our true nature. So the Tantra was very focused, a path for enlightenment. It was not for the popular folk, it was for the serious seekers. That's why it was required to be initiated to show your commitment towards the path. And in the initiation, it was shown much of the transcendental experience that will help you getting ready and prepare yourself so this you can live in the world from this level of reality. The practice in the Vedas were the rituals in nature. In the Purāṇas were rituals in the temple to the deities. In the Tantras were yantras, mantras and inner ritual. So we can see here clearly the development. Of course, if the Vedas praise and beg to the gods, so they will perform the rituals in open spaces, connecting and elevating the offerings, the oblation to the fire that will reach the gods of the sky. In the Puranic, that there were anthropomorphic gods, they have human shape, very special type of human shape, but the Purāṇas describe in detail the shapes and the iconography of the gods, and not only that, the generations of God, the cosmology, and of course the stories in which we hear how the different gods teach the sages about the transcendental realities. So here we see that start the connection, the bhakti, the connection to the direct God. This is how the temple worship started. It's also a very tantric element, but we, instead of going to nature, we're starting seeing the Puranic worship. The Puranic worship is the worship to a deity. But in the Tantra, the process continue developing. And the Tantras and the Purāṇas, we see how they enrich each other as well. But although it's starting from a deity, this is the most gross way of connecting to the divinity, because it's a form. It's a form, it's a determined form. And the divinity is not a form separate from me. God is immanent. So there are ways that there are more subtle ways to connect to the essence of the divine, which is yantras, that they are geometrical representations of the deity, and the mantras, that they were the sonoric representation of the deity. And ultimately, the ritual is to visualize yourself as the deity, because you are divinity itself, so you can perform all the ritual. You don't need a priest, you don't need a temple, you don't need a deity, you just need your awareness. With your awareness, you embody the divine in you, and then you discover your true nature as divine. In the Vedas, the way for spiritual advancement was through rituals and knowledge. In the Purāṇas, through devotion. And in the Tantras, through yoga and meditation. So you can see also here the trend. The way to accumulate good karma, good deeds for a prosperous reincarnation was through taking part of the ritual, participating, donating, supporting, and performing these rituals. And knowledge, we have the Purāṇas, that through the knowledge, it's kind of an idealistic approach. Through the knowledge, we can advance and understand. The Upanishads are astonishing later development of the Vedic revelation, in which it's explained the nature of Brahman. In the development of the Purāṇas, the main way to advance is the way of devotion. I can say that in the retroprogressive yoga, devotion has a very big part. Prabhuji says that devotion is the glue that you need to set up together this separation, this artificial separation of yourself. So devotion will keep you attracted and will keep you focused and interested in your true nature. So the Purāṇas gives all these festivities, they're festivals, they're celebration. There is a temple, there is the communal chanting and worship and colorful, all this engagement, all this storytelling of the different adventures and lilas of the God makes you something very sweet and very attractive. Make the gods part of your life, part of what you hear since childhood, part of your the way you know how to behave. It's shaped the ethics of the human beings. But the Tantras, what they did is to focus on yoga and meditation. You have your body, your body has vital energy, sensual energy, sexual energy. This is the power, the fuel that will push your spiritual search. So you need to unlock your potential. How? Through different practices and different meditations that use the body as a tool for liberation. In the Vedas, liberation is to be promoted to higher planes. In Purāṇas, it's to achieve pure devotion. And in the Tantras, it speaks about liberation in life. Of course, as a word of caution, those are very, very big, each one, a very big corpus of scripture. So when I do a generalization of the qualities, it can be called a simplification, because inside each one of them are very nuances and very differences. But broadly speaking, the Purāṇas, the Vedas talk about different planetary systems, and to perform these rituals will help you to be reborn in a higher plane. You can call it paradise or the different cosmic levels. In the Purāṇas, when you purify your devotion, this is a state of self-realization. Broadly speaking, again, the Puranas are dualistic. So we speak about the division between the devotee and the gods. So to achieve a state of pure devotion is the maximum aspiration of the divine, of the humans. In Tantra, we are speaking about a merge and a self-realization of your divinities, the mystical and the esoterical aspect of the search, in which you become liberated in the world. What that means, that you stop identifying with yourself as a separate entity and realize the unity and the divinity of your true nature. And then you can still live in the body, in the world, but being a tool for the Icha Shakti, Kriya Shakti, Jnana Shakti, for the forces of Shiva that want to act and operate in this world. So this is the state of liberation. In each one of them, in the Vedas, in the Purāṇas, and in the Tantras, we find different currents. And we find the Vaishnavism, the Shaivism, and the Shaktism. So next we will analyze the difference between these three streams within Hinduism. Let's have a look at the different gods that each corpus presents. So in the pantheon of the Vedas there are many gods, but we find the seeds of the Shaivism, Vaishnavism, and Shaktism. We find the god Rudra, which will be later be identified as the Lord Shiva. And then we see how later develop in the Purāṇas as the Shaiva Purāṇas dedicated to Lord Shiva, and in the Tantras we have the corpus of the Shaiva Tantras. In the Vedas we do find goddesses. There were several Vedic goddesses, but they were not very central in the worship that was being offered to them or the hymns that praised them. They were mainly the consorts of the male counterparts. But later on in the Purāṇas, we have a whole set of scriptures that they are the Shakta Purāṇas, dedicated to telling the mythology of the female goddesses, mainly Lakshmi, Saraswati, and Durga. In the time of the Tantra, of course, we have the Shakta Tantras that worship the divine energy of Shiva, the goddess, and they took all these ferocious aspects, and mainly the goddess Kali. In the Vedas, we have Vishnu, or Narayana, also identified as Vishnu. And in the time of the Purāṇas, we have a whole set of scriptures that they are the Vaishnava Purāṇas. The most famous one is the Bhagavata Purāṇa, that speaks the story of Vishnu, the origin of the world, and the different manifestations of Vishnu, like Vasudeva and, of course, Krishna. The Tantra stage also have a set of scriptures that they are Vaishnava Tantras. Those are the Pancharatra Tantras, in which the divine is Vishnu and his consort Lakshmi is the divine energy worshipped in the aspect of Tantra. We also find the god of the sun, of course, so central. The god Surya is worshipped in so many traditions, and we find him in the Vedas, we find him in the Purāṇas, and also in the Tantras, although this is a tradition that didn't develop further, but we do have a set of canon that is the Saurya Tantras. In the Vedas, one of the main gods is Prajapati, that is the god Brahma, the creator, according to the Vedas, and we do find the continuation in the Purāṇas, where their Purāṇas tells the stories of Brahma. Brahma, as the creator in the Tantras, is just one of the aspects of Shiva. Shiva will become the creator, the destroyer, and the maintainer of all the worlds. We do have in the Tantras Tantras dedicated to Ganapatya, also a tradition that didn't develop further, but it was the guidance and the worship of Lord Ganesh. In the Vedas, we have, of course, the priest Agni, the Lord of Fire, and in the Purāṇas, we also have Purāṇas of Agni. Lastly, we have Indra, main god in the Vedas, is considered the god of gods, but later on it just became a very minor god in the Purāṇas, and it's just not there anymore in the stage of the Tantras. We can see the richness of the spirituality of India, and many might think, okay, this looks like polytheism. Looks even a bit primitive way to approach the search. But the truth is that one of the slogans of Hinduism is plurality. And they see that we are very different between us. And that's why we need the very different ways to approach the divine. So there are not many gods. There is only one ultimate reality. But there are many ways for us to reach it. And what we see here are different doors that open to different people. And that's how this variety and richness, not leave everybody within one set, one doctrine, one path, and this is the only path. No, it's very difficult to become dogmatic within such a large variety of developments and ways to find your way, because you might find attractive. So say, follow your attraction, follow your heart. Choose your Ishta Devata, this God in which you feel a more intimate relationship. Develop this relationship, worship, praise, see the beauty, the iconography, worship at home, worship at the temple, beg, ask, develop your humbleness, your spirit of service, your love. And with the Tantra, go one step forward, go inwards, and find your identity with the deity. You are the deity. You are not separate from the deity. So it's fascinating, it's beautiful. And we see that although, Hinduism, we can be thought from the Western point of view as one religion, like we have Judaism, Hinduism, Christianity. Whoever lives it from within, he knows that there are many religions within that religion. And I almost more identify with being a Vaishnava or even a Shaiva than being a Hindu. Hindu is a very broad term. But within this, there are very different streams. So let's analyze a bit the differences between the Vaishnavism, the Shaktism, and the Shaivism within the Tantric revelation. In Vaishnavism, the worship is offered to Vishnu, but Vishnu has several manifestations. The most known ones are Vishnu, Narayana, Krishna, and Vasudeva. He's also worshipped with his consort. Mainly Lakshmi is the consort of Vishnu, but we have Radha, that is the consort of Krishna, in this loving and amazing relationship of merging, being one, and becoming two, Krishna and Radha. In Shaivism, we have three types of deities, which also are streams within Shaivism. We have Rudra, the fearful god, we have Shiva, the benevolent god, and we have Bhairava. Bhairava is the ferocious deity that become the deity of all the left path, the left hands of Tantra. His consorts are the goddess Parvati, the consort of Shiva, and Bhairavi, the consort of Bhairava. In Shaktism, we see the worship to the goddesses. The main goddess within Shaktism is Kali, one of the main goddesses. We have the right hand, the benevolent goddess, the beautiful Tripura Sundari, also called Lalita. And we have, of course, the goddesses of the Kula Marga, the Trika goddesses, Kuleshwara and Kubchika. Each one of these streams has its own canon of scriptures. Prabhuji will dedicate a whole chapter later on in this book to detail all the very vast canon of each one of these streams. Many of the scriptures were preserved, but many were lost, and we only know them by name, but we don't know the content. The Vaishnavism, usually the scriptures, the tantric scriptures, are called the Samhitas. Those are the Pancharatra agamas. In Shaivism, we call them the agamas, and the scriptures of the Shaktism are called the Tantras. We also see a development in the approach towards reality. In Vaishnavism, the conception of reality is mainly dualism, meaning there is here the world, there is there the divine plane. I am a devotee, I aspire for devotion, but I never merge. In Shaivism, we find both. We have the first sects of the dualism. As the revelation develop, we find the seeds of non-dualism. But Shaktism, which is the later development of Tantra, is all based on non-dualism. All the practices are aimed to realize that there is no division, there is no two things. In Vaishnavism, God is transcendent and I worship Him. In Shaivism, we find also transcendent sects that worship Shiva as the demigod, also the Shiva Lingam as the symbol of union between Shiva and Shakti. But we also have the seeds of the immanent God that change totally the search for the divine. Because if God is here, so how I need to live my life if I am divine? And it brings all the search to a very inward journey in which I need to know myself first of all. Shaktism is the beauty of the immanent God, where you eventually, when you are realize, you will see that divinity is everywhere, that you are divinity. And the purpose of the practice is just to remove the veil that doesn't allow you to see that. In Vaishnavism, we aspire for pure devotion. The pure devotee is this who can worship God with the totally disappearance of his self and becoming love. We have so many saints within the Tantric Vaishnavism that realize themselves, they purify their heart. In Shaivism, again, it's really a generalization. Tantra within Shaivism is so vast, but we can say that broadly speaking, there is an initiation that, let's say, clean your karma and expose you to an altered state of consciousness. Then you have the life of ritual. You need to make and commit to these practices of ritual during your life. And if you pass the initiation, so liberation is assured, is a promise after life. But the approach of Shaktism is, I want to celebrate here my divinity, to celebrate in life, because God is here. And then the approach is a very life affirming. All the pleasures that this life can give you, all the beauty that you can experience here is embraced, because I want to enjoy this world, being aware that I'm not separate, but not missing up on the pleasures that we can experience in this artificial state of separation, because in fact there is no separation. But that's why there is no experience that can threaten my unity with the divine, and therefore I have no reason to reject nothing in this life. In Vaishnavism, the way to liberation is devotion. Devotion is such an important element in the search. It can be very dry and become very boring if you cannot vibrate with this energy of love and passion towards your God, of celebrating, of chanting the names of the God. This is the path of Vaishnavism. Shaivism is a very ritualistic, and also mantras, also repetition of mantras is very based on the sonoric connection with the divine. Shaktism is the part of the body. You need to realize and analyze your experience in this world, because ultimately you will realize that it's a world of experiences, but you are the one who experienced them. You are not the agent of your experiences. And this, for that, they give you the path of yoga and the path of meditation with so many different techniques to realize this unity. What is fascinating is that within 3 of these streams, we find the sects of the right path and of the left path. I will just name them here, and in the future courses, we will study the qualities and peculiarities of each one of them. In Vaishnavism, we have sects of the right, like the Pancharatra, and we have sects of the left, like the Sajya. In Shaivism, we have sects of the right, like the Shaiva Siddhanta and the Viraja Shaivism, and we have sects of the left, like the Siddhas, the Nata, the Agoris, and the sects of the Atimarga, the Pashupatas, Lakulas, and Kapalikas. In Shaktism, we have sects of the right, like the Shri Vidya, that became so popular even till today, and we have sects of the left, the Kula Marga sects and the Kali Kula. If you're interested to learning more about these topics and the qualities of each one of these beautiful paths, the books gives a lot more details. What I try to do here is just to give a bit of taste, just an overview of these different approaches towards the search. What I will do next is I will take just a few paragraphs of each one of these paths from what Prabhuji explains in the book and give you some of the taste to open your appetite to read more and study further. About Shaivism, Prabhuji writes, the Vedic deity Rudra and Shiva became synonymous because both refer to the same deity. The god Rudra is mentioned for the first time in the Rig Veda, which praises him in 3 of its hymns and considers him the most powerful among the powerful. Rudra means the roar and is a fierce and destructive deity associated with wind, rain, thunder, and hunting. The hymn 1092 refers to the 2 aspects of Rudra. One wild, aggressive, and cruel, Rudra, and the other one peaceful, Shiva. Smritic literature reveals a great diversity of aspects of Shiva. In his aspect of the destroyer, Rudra, he is closer to the nature of Shakti. Shiva is the lord of yogis or Yogeshwara. He is also called Kuleshwara or the lord of the Kaulas. We need to understand that Tantric revelation was born from within Shaivism. It was a very special field that gave the opportunity for such an subtle revelation to appear. And there were very historical circumstances that we can analyze them. We are not talking about history here. We are talking about the readiness of certain seekers to canalize, to channel more subtle truths and bring all the search a step forward in doing that, opening the opportunity for so many more people to walk the path. Now, this short text addresses 2 things. One, this identification between Rudra, it's kind of a continuation of the god Rudra and Shiva. Rudra was a minor god in the time of the Vedas. He was mentioned 3 times, he was not very central, but there were certain circumstances that make from this minor god a central god, Shiva, a whole movement towards this god, making him very prominent in the time of the Purāṇas, when we hear all the mythology and the stories of this Lord Shiva, but later on, of course, becoming the ultimate reality. And the reasons that led to this is this representation of what was Rudra, this god of the hunting, of the forests, the fearful god. This god became the god of the left hand of the path, in which the people that worship the dark aspects of the divinity. They get connected to Rudra, identify with Shiva, and worshipping the aspect of the darkness, the dark aspect, and creating here an integration of the light and the darkness, the Rudra and the Shiva, creating the totality of one reality. So there is a representation there of one reality, and in the next course we are going to do about the Ati Marga, which were the first sects of Shaivism. We will speak further about this mythology of the god Rudra. But there was another state, another movement that Prabhuji here mentioned, that Shiva was the lord of the yogis. So we see a switch from austerities, from asceticism to yoga. Asceticism is to torture the body, to punish the body in order to go beyond the body. And the Tantra comes to say, no, why to punish it? We can utilize actually the enjoyment of the body to go beyond the body. So we see here with the Lord Shiva a switch from asceticism into yoga. All this further we will study in the next course. Prabhuji writes about Vaishnavism. During the second half of the first millennium, Tantric Shaivism was gaining popularity and followers. The Tantric view of the body, the acceptance of all classes, its soteriological goals, and the sophisticated system of rituals and mantras attracted many followers. The Vaishnava tradition, on the other hand, was more committed to the devotional aspect of Vedic practice and therefore was less receptive to the emerging Tantric attitude. However, the winds of the Tantric revelation reached the Vaishnava Pancharatra sect that worshipped Narayana. The influence of Tantrism on this tradition gave rise to new scriptures known collectively as Pancharatra Agamas, probably revealed around Kashmir in the 8th to 14th century. So we study the Tantra emerging within Shaivism, and was such an explosion, so influential. People were it was like a magnet that attracted so many followers. It brought a new set of ritual, allowed to everyone. The mantras could be repeated by everyone. You didn't have to be a Brahmana to repeat the mantras. You can be initiated. It brought lineages of enlightened beings that were expanding exponentially, teaching more and more disciples and bringing the goals of liberation. You can be liberated in life. We are not doomed to suffer. We can embrace life. We don't need to embrace. We don't need austerities. We can utilize our body for liberation. So it was like an explosion and becoming so popular that the Vaishnavism was declining in its popularity because it was very antagonistic to this type of renovation. They were very Vedic, that the Tantra brought so many not allowed practices, not conventional practices, so it was late to adapt. But there was one particular sect, and Prabhuji explains much more in the book, that they embraced this, incorporating the Tantric ritual into the Purāṇic ritual. So we see how in India, starting from a Vedic ritual, become Purāṇic ritual, and ultimately incorporating the Tantric ritual. Now later on, it was this Pancharatra Agamas will become the main type of worship in all the different Vaishnava sects. So they start being adapted by the different Vaishnava acharyas, and today what we worship as Vaishnavism is the Pancharatra ritual system. This is a bit of what Prabhuji writes about Shaktism. Tantric Shaktism is based on the idea that the objective universe we perceive and experience is a manifestation of the divine energy of the goddess, who creates and maintains the cosmos and its creatures. According to the Tantric scriptures, creative power is especially expressed in the sensuality of human beings and in their quests for the reintegration of both genders. It is the universal manifesting itself in the individual dimension, the absolute in the relative. In essence, Tantra involves both the integration and the practical means to stimulate the powers of nature. Hence, it is intimately connected to the worship of Shakti as nature's vital energy. Well, Shaktism is rich, is deep. It says that is the path for the Kali Yuga, for this age in which we are deeply identified with the body and even disenchanted from the mysteries of the beyond. So it utilizes just the tools of our current reality and says you are obsessively and helplessly attracted to the other gender. Analyze this attraction. There is there the power of Shakti, the will to reunite. It is known that Abhinavagupta, that we studied about him last class, he went through many initiations and studied from many sources. He was brilliant. But the transcendental experience, you only reach it through the Kaula ritual, which is the ritual of sexual union with the partner. There is when he realized the unity with the universe. So this is the powerful techniques that bring the Tantra. Of course, it's an esoteric path. It's not something that we can walk without close guidance of someone who is liberated and he knows the dangers of it, but also how to utilize, really to unleash the power of nature. And Shaktism, that today is Shaktism and Tantra, is basically the same. Shaktism knows how to connect, how Prabhuji says if you are on the floor, just use the floor to lift yourself. Because to know where you are, recognize where you are entangled with your attractions and trying to trace this attraction. What is the Icha Shakti behind your desires? What is the Kriya Shakti behind your actions? What is the Jnana Shakti behind your knowledge of the world? So I hope you can just feel the subtlety of this path and why it's so astonishing, rich and advanced and relevant for our search. I want to finalize with these inspiring words by Prabhuji. In the supreme experience, the reality of pure consciousness emerges free from the transcendental subjective duality of Shiva and Shakti. In enlightenment, there is only Brahman, the one without a second. The Shiva-Shakti poles merge, as we see depicted in the erotic tantric sculptures, where they are united in a state devoid of separation. Only the divine couple keeps the secret that two are capable of being one without ceasing to be two. The path to reunion is full of beauty. We see this passion to reunite, this erotic path of Tantra brings to just symbolize the search of the soul for its source. But only someone who lives liberated in the world can say this amazing sentence of discover the secret. There is a secret here. A secret is that you can be one but appears as two. And that a couple, this Shiva-Shakti couple, can stay in a divine play without ceasing to be one. This is the secret. Who I am, I feel so separate from the divine. Are you sure? Did you check it? Or did you take a version that you have in your mind? Can you really say what is your agency and what is the agency of the divine? Who you are really? How you make this miracle of being aware? What is your awareness? Trace it. Go for it. And really the Tantra pushes you inwards because it brings you to your experience. Explore your experiences. Prabhuji says, when you study all this book and all this Tantra, don't be focused on the knowledge. We are not speaking about these things to accumulate more knowledge or to enlarge our warehouse of words. The purpose is just to get this inspiration of the human search. I deeply admire those who do not buy the official version of what is life and do not agree for the conventional path, but open for the adventure of the discovery. And this is what I see in the Tantrikas. Brave souls, inspiring souls, that they were non-conformist. He said, I don't want a religious jail. I don't want a jail at all. I want myself, I want to reunite. And oh boy, they did found, and they brought this help, this knowledge, this inspiration. And the beauty, because when the divine express here, we see how it express. It express in celebration, in art, in poetry, in dance, in celebrating the fact of being two. Like we don't want separation anymore, but once we are aware that all is part of the divine plan, that He wants to just separate itself for the joy of reunion, and this reunion can happen in you. You are the party maker of this universe, and you just need to dare to open yourself to explore your nature, and not to just conform with what you're supposed to do. So it's a bit of rebellion against your mental version of reality, and to awake your curiosity and your passion, because this path will require the energy that comes when you're passionate for the reunion. So if you can channel this passion that you usually have for the enjoyment of this world, but without forgetting who is the one who enjoys, who is the subject of this experience, and who am I in all this divine cosmic plane. So those are the hints of the Tantrikas that point inwards to the direction of our self-realization. So you can see there is so much more to explore. We will finish this course on this overview of the Tantra in this class, and in the next course I hope to meet again for going deeper into each one of these sects, to learn how they emerged, what they look for, what new winds they brought, the winds of awe and enchantment and discovery. And for me, everyone that dare to live fully their spiritual life and their spiritual adventure is just a hope. I belong to that race. I belong to the race of those who seek. And I cannot even wish that we will find, because according to the Retroprogressive Yoga, there is nothing to find. Already the search is the goal. We are already in the goal, and it's a matter of paying attention. So may we all pay attention to what already is here, and of course fully grateful to Prabhuji for open the appetite of exploration by sharing the beauty of the tantric history and of his own discoveries. So we will meet in the next course. Jai Prabhuji.